In today's gospel, we see John the Baptist, and always at the second Sunday of Advent, we have the rendition of St. John the Baptist and the role he played right before the coming of Christ. And his voice is always the same: prepare the way of the Lord, make straight his paths. It's interesting, my friends, in the ancient days, before a visit from a king, the king would always send a group, or usually a group, but sometimes it may be one, but a group of people to go through the lands. And the route that he's taking, they make sure the roads are all covered, all the obstacles are removed, the divots and the whole potholes are all filled in, so it's able to travel with somewhat ease. And then the other role would be to make sure the people are aware of that there's a king coming. So the first would be to remove obstacles, and then the second would be to announce. And that's what St. John the Baptist is doing. I was reading an article this past week, and it was talking about President Nixon and his historic visit to China. But this is how the article started. It said, "Some of you are old enough to remember when President Nixon made his historic visit to China." I thought to myself, why did they have to add that first sentence? But you know, it talked about the visit to China, but they also talked about really the one who made that happen. And do you remember who the Secretary of State was at that time? Yeah, somebody said over here. Was it? Yeah, Henry Kissinger, sure. Henry Kissinger worked 2 years, 2 full years for that visit to take place. And you know, really, we have a partnership with Japan or China today, and it's not that great, but it's at least due to all the work that Henry Kissinger did. The power of the messenger. And you know, my friends, it shows us that the preparation is just as important, if not more important, than the actual visit. What are some of the obstacles that we have in our lives? And the very first one, of course, is our sins, right? Is our sins. At dinner, a little boy told his parents, and he said to his mom, "You know, Mom, there's a very small PTA meeting at school tomorrow evening." And the mother replied, "Well, if it's small, do you think we ought to go?" And the boy said, "Yes, Mom, I think you should go. It's you, it's me, and it's the principal." You know, my friends, I think we all need to have things set out in our life, don't we? We really do. And it's amazing how sin starts. And I'm just going to talk briefly about 5, but you know, I was in that article was talking about how fish are caught. We generally think they're caught in a net, but in a lot of parts of the world, and all like the lobsters and crabs, they're put in cages, right? Bait is put in the middle, and the crabs come in, lobsters come in and feed. If they would go in and out, get what they need, and leave, they would never be caught. But what do? They stay there. They stay there. And it's the same with fish. Some of them that don't use nets, they use these big crates, and they have these little grooves, these wooden or steel grooves, and the fish would flow through, and the feed would be there, and they would come in and out. But the more they feed, guess what happens? They expand, and they're not able to get through the grates. And see, sin starts out very, very small, and yet it takes a hold of our life. 5 in particular that affect many of us, my friends, like lust. Starts out where? In the mind and the eyes, and it always starts small. You know, our minds start to travel, our minds start to go places where they shouldn't, and all of a sudden what happens? We're trapped. And we have this crazy addiction in our minds and our hearts. Greed, same thing. You know, we need things, and then we need things, and then we need things, and we need things. When's it stop, right? When's it stop? Anger. You know, these are all things that we all deal with. Anger. You know, sometimes it's necessary, But the hurt that we do, that we cause with anger, all of us, my friends, we say and do things out of anger, and we just say, oh, well, no, it needs to be addressed. These need to be addressed. Jealousy. Jealousy is that subtle little thing that we want something from someone, or we want to be like them, or we want to have what they have. Meanwhile, this person has done nothing wrong, and yet we hate them for it. We hate them for it. Or unforgiveness. Unforgiveness. Somebody's hurt us. We rehearse it, and then we rehearse it, and then we rehearse it, and then we rehearse it again. And meanwhile, more and more poisons being filled in our life. You see how it works, my friends? Start small, and then we get trapped. And then we get trapped. And then it becomes a huge obstacle in our life. That's why the church is very wise to make these seasons, because, we let these things go, and then like Advent and Lent, we need to address them. We need to address them. One of the best areas to address those sins, of course, is confession. Next Sunday afternoon, we have the parish penance service at 2 o'clock. We have at least a half a dozen priests. And then also on Thursdays, the next 2 Thursdays, from 4:30 to 6, I'll have confessions. And then the Monday before Christmas as well, from 4:30 to 6. Also during that time, I'll have the exposition of Blessed Sacrament here. I'll be playing soft music. If you don't need to go to confession, it's a wonderful time just to come in church and focus. After a day's work, just come in here for a few minutes, get renewed, refreshed, and then leave. It's a beautiful way, my friends. And the other thing that we need to look at in our lives is indifference. If we find ourselves saying things like, it doesn't really matter, I miss Mass, or I miss my prayers, or it doesn't really matter, these things affect my life. Indifference has gotten a hold of you. And all we need to do is look at our relationships and see how destructive indifference is. Look at your spouse. When we start saying to us, I don't care what she does or he does, your marriage or your relationship's over. Because indifference has settled in, right? It's very, very, again, subtle, but it destroys. And we need to look at that. Advent's a time to push that stuff out, my friends. General Douglas MacArthur said, preparedness is the key to success and victory. And Henry Ford echoed those same thoughts when he said, before anything else, getting ready is the secret to success. Being prepared, my friends, is just as important, if not more important, than the actual feast itself. And that's what St. John the Baptist is saying. A voice crying out in the desert saying, prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight your path. God bless you.